I think it's really lovely to finish off with this presentation. Jonathan Davidson from Google talking about the new toys that we're going to get. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, folks. I understand that I am between you and maybe a couple of beers. I'm obviously running the graveyard shift here. I just want to thank you all for staying. Absolutely. So everybody, my name is Jonathan Davidson. I'm a customer engineer at Google Cloud. So I'd just like to thank Ellen for doing all of the hard work explaining some of the SDM stuff. I'm a cloud practitioner myself, and you might be asking, well, what is a cloud guy doing in front of you right now? Well, cloud is going to be driving a lot of the demand on the cable that's coming. So we are super excited about what is happening, about the landing that's just occurred. So, it's all about Equiano, and we believe Equiano is not just another cable. So Equiano, if you might or might not know, is our third private cable investment and the 12th submarine cable investment overall that Google has made. It is named after a luminary, Olaudah Equiano, who is a slave abolitionist, and we're very proud of the cable landing and what we're going to be bringing to the continent. Let me just go back quickly. In case you didn't know, the cable has landed from Portugal. So Sesimbra is one of the landing stations. Down, the main trunk goes down West Africa. We have a private trunk into Togo. We've got one of the other main trunks into Lagos, Nigeria, that landed about 6 months ago. We then have another private trunk into St. Helena, which is going to be their first non-satellite internet access on the island. We've landed another private trunk into Swakopmund, and then on the 8th of August, we landed here in Cape Town. When I landed this afternoon, we had an unfortunate incident at the airport, so we needed to circle around the bay. A beautiful day today. Love coming down to Cape Town, and I got to see Melkbosstrand over and over again. But I just didn't see where this landing, the actual landing site was. But I would have loved to have been there myself. I think most of you know who Chris George is, or have worked with Chris George. He was fortunate enough to be here for that landing. So why did we build the cable? So in the late 2010s, Google saw a tightening of capacity down the east coast of Africa. We commissioned a number of studies into a new submarine cable system down the east coast of Africa. But the costs around the marine digging and trenching, etc., through the Red Sea and down the west coast of Africa was a lot more expensive than we had hoped, right? So what we decided to do is take the cheaper option, the safer option down the west coast of Africa. This cable is 20 times the capacity of the previous cable that landed in the region. We are adding massive scale to the continent. We have seen a huge uptake of bandwidth, and I'm sure you all are well aware of what is happening on the continent from an internet economy perspective. So, talking about funding of this cable. So essentially what Google wants to do, and because of the uptake of Google services on the continent, if you're thinking search, YouTube, and all of our other services, cloud growing at a rapid rate on the continent as well, we want to be able to distribute, our content, our cloud services for future use more reliably to the continent. Operators on the continent have a lot to gain and more benefit, in investing in their own access networks as opposed to spending huge amounts on submarine cables themselves. We started as a consortium, but the consortium did not come up with the funds to build a cable. So what we did at Google was decide to take on the project ourselves as our third cable investment, private cable investment. We took up the main trunks, so the Europe to South Africa and the other trunk from Europe, or shall I say the Nigeria trunk as well. We're currently trading fiber pairs, and I guess this is from the likes of WIOC and Telecom Portugal, as well as OpenServe, a number of landing partners, and Spectrum trading that we're busy doing. What is the reach, of Equiano? If we think about, I explained the route. So as I mentioned, we've got the main trunk, that is South Africa to Portugal with a branch to Nigeria. I mentioned that we've got private branches, Namibia, St. Helena, and Togo, and those are privately owned trunks currently. We do have a phase 2, and this is really sort of directional, so not confirmed, but we plan to start landing other branching units through to other landing sites on the west coast of the continent as well. This is the first truly open access submarine in Africa. There will be no cross-connect fees, and customers can start putting their submarine landing termination equipment wherever they want to, right? And this is extremely different, very much different to other cables that have landed. And essentially that allows you to scale as and when you want to. So how is Equiano different? So I've just mentioned it is essentially the first open line cable system, truly open access system. It's a private cable. There's one owner. And the benefits that come with that is, you don't have consortium parties arguing about direction for the cable and the investments that, in terms of expansion. The fiber, or spectrum owners, as I mentioned, just they get to manage their own SLTE. No cross connects, and these SLTs can be located at owners' own sites, so they can be extended on local fiber with no need for backhaul transponders. Right. We also have the WSS ROADMs, right? So that wavelength specific wavelength select switching. That's it. Optical switching that allows waves to be routed avoiding branches, right? Or down branches, and this is completely reconfigurable. And branches can be optimally, bypassed in branching units, just in case there is an outage. And I'll get into a little bit more detail around that. Of course, Alan explained that this is an SDM cable, right? So from a power perspective, there's a lot lower power requirements. We've got obviously four laser pumps muxed with 4 laser pairs, bringing down that power requirement. So, was anybody here for that landing? I mean, yes. I wish I was there, right? So a couple of pictures from the event. On the left-hand side, you're seeing the cable ship out at Melkbos. What we needed to do is get that cable to this manhole, right? We used a quadrant to be able to make that happen. You see that on the right-hand side. And then we essentially floated the cable in using buoys, right? So there you can see it coming in nicely, landing there. And then, anybody familiar with well, it's typically what you do when you land these cables. You have the golden buoy, right? Apparently the ship did not have it, so what they did was they spray painted the buoy. And they clearly didn't do a really great job of doing that before signing it. Now you can see Chris was there for that signing. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, we've got just a view of what the fiber pairs sort of looked like just before they were spliced in the junction. So what does this cable system look like, right? What are the building blocks for this? And we heard some questions about the wet plant and the dry plant. So from the wet plant perspective, we've got our branching units, we've got our WSS ROADMs, we've got our repeaters or amplifiers, and then we've got the cable and the cable protection capabilities. From the dry side plant, we've got our earthing capabilities. We've got our fiber portals. We'll get into a little bit more detail on this. And of course, we've got our spectrum sharing equipment. And of course, then, which is different, as you can see, from other cable landing systems, is we've got the SLTEs outside of the actual system. So, from the wet plants, what are the bits that fit into that? So we've got our repeaters or amplifiers, and these can house up to 16 fiber pairs, right? We currently have 12 fiber pairs for the entire initial configuration. And as mentioned in the SDM, we've got four laser pumps per 4 fiber pairs. Obviously, if we lose one laser, we can, because these have been muxed, we have redundancy for those remaining fiber pairs or those remaining lasers. We have the WS ROADM, and then of course we've got our branching units, right? This branching units allows us to do reconfigurable power, right? So across the cable we have a capability of or capacity to do 30 kilovolts. So in case there is an outage, some kind of obstruction, what we're able to do is set the 0 point for the cable wherever that interruption occurs. We're then able to power the rest of the cable using the other points on the cable. So that adds some pretty decent reconfigurable powering capability. So if we look at the WS ROADM, what we're able to do is, use, I think it was up to 384 bands for these selective switching. So the outer bands, what we'll do is use the 25 gigahertz band, and the inner, the sub bands that fall between that, we'll use the 12.5 gigahertz bands. Then we move to the active, or to the dry plant. So we have the fiber wave portal. So spectrum splitting on a single fiber pair can be a risky business, right? So failure or some kind of misconfiguration or some kind of incorrect power setting on one fiber pair, or shall I say on one band, can impact other bands, right? So what this portal does allow us to do is to provide some protection and management of the spectrum splitting by injecting ASC noise. So I think this is something that Alan mentioned in his presentation. Right. What we will experience is there could be a potential blip, but it's probably 1 second, 2 seconds, and things are back to normal. So this wave portal will allow us to do the spectrum sharing, policing, protection, and of course ensuring that there's confidentiality between those shared bands on the cable or on the pair. So what does the cable look like? So essentially there are 4 configurations here, and I think one of the gentlemen came up to me who had been at the event, had a piece of it. It was you, right? You left it at home. Which one, particular one? So we've got our lightweight protected, and those are essentially for the deep sea. Which one was? Okay, so it would have been one of the, yeah. Okay, so that's probably the 37 millimeter one. So obviously in our benign water in the deep, so we've got two flavors of the cable. So on the outside we've got polythene, we have our copper shielding, we've got the protective or the load-bearing layer, and of course the container itself. As we move closer to shore, there's a requirement for more and more protection. So we have further steel outer rungs to be able to handle the operations as the drilling, or at least the excavation, moves closer to the beach. And that's surrounded by a bitumen sheath, all to keep the cable waterproof and to manage the weight. So, key parameters. So I mentioned there are 12 fiber pairs. So the initial configuration is 144 terabits per second. Right. So the main trunks at the moment, the length of the cable from Sesimbra to Malkostrand is just over 11,000 kilometers, with the portion from Sesimbra to Lagos being 7,500, and Lagos to Malkostrand being 5,500. So why so big? So I mentioned earlier on that Google has a keen eye on Africa. We see a lot of opportunity. If any of you tuned into the Google for Africa event last year, our CEO, Sundar Pichai, made a pledge on Google's behalf for a $1 billion investment into the continent over the coming years. We see that for our services, there is an absolute explosion of demand on the continent from an internet economy perspective, and we're seeing a huge drive towards cloud services as well. COVID-19 has delayed this somewhat, and you might be aware our initial target for the cable was 2021. We are not immune to the chip shortage, by no means, and so that has delayed things slightly. But we believe that the internet economy on the continent is in full steam ahead. So where does Equiano fit in Google's bigger, broader infrastructure? So from the year 2016 to 2018, Google spent $47 billion on infrastructure globally. So what you're seeing there on the screen are the black dots are data centers, so huge hyperscale needs. We're seeing the other things that you're seeing there are our points of presence, so for our content services like our YouTube, search, etc., our points of presence across the globe. In green are our submarine investments, and then in blue are our investments into cables, where we are customers of the cable owner. You may or may not know that Google operates the largest network globally, and we currently carry around 25% of the world's global internet traffic. Scale is everything to us at Google. We've always trying to be solving for planet scale problems. We've currently got 9 platforms with over 1 billion users each. And this brings us to cloud. So from a cloud perspective, we need to be able to support the growing demand for cloud services. So currently, I work for Google Cloud. We have 34 regions across the globe that are driving this hyperscale, this demand for data transfer, for low latency. Google has the greatest reach amongst the hyperscalers. So what you're seeing here, not only are our regions, but our network edge locations, our points of presence and our edge nodes. So partnering with the telcos, we're able to extend our cloud computing business right to the edge, which is where cloud computing is going. But if you think about services like Stadia, or you think about 5G, this is where cloud computing is taking us. And this is essentially what Equiano is going to be supporting us in the future, and why we've invested so heavily in the cable. And ultimately, what we're doing with this is reducing unit cost through the scale that we are providing. We are going to be providing a massive capacity for the region, the sub-Saharan African region. We'll be able to partner, with the scale terrestrial networks. And what ultimately we want to do as Google is to be able to more reliably push our products onto the continent for our users. As I mentioned earlier, we see huge demand for our services on the continent, at least within the last 5 years. And of course, this helps us and helps our partners reduce unit costs. And that is why we have invested in such scale in Equiano. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So, I can see there's going to be lots of questions, but we're not going to take any. No, I'm kidding. I actually want to take the privilege of being the chair of the session, ask the first question. You talk about terrestrial cables and partnering with partners in terrestrial cables to get inland to the landlocked countries and things like that. But are you seeing that as a challenge at the moment to find capacity to go into the middle of the continent?
So this is exactly Chris's role. He is a barter. Our customers or these networks have assets, and we have the submarine cable. What he has, we have full teams that support him on the continent, and their job is to go and ensure that we have capacity. It is a fair. You asked, is it a challenge? Yes, it is a challenge, but one that we are solving through these partnerships.
Let's start. Just remember name and where you're from.
Hi, Greg Beneke from Vumatel. So you've invested in this undersea cable. So when does that extend to you having more data center facilities rather than the single point of presence you have currently? Obviously, there's the area of cloud, that's your area, but then also the area of client-facing services, which, in my experience, is a little bit fragile in South Africa. It's because everything's centralized in one point at the moment.
Right. So in parallel with the Equiano project, we have interconnect upgrades happening at our points of presence. So customers will be able to interconnect into to our into our Google network. So from a physical perspective, right? So we'll be getting up to, for the partner interconnect, 10 gigabits per second increments with an SLA, and through for smaller organizations through the partner interconnect. So we partner with organizations who will sell much smaller increments. I think it's 50 megabits. So that's from a networking perspective. While I mentioned that Sundar had mentioned the $1 billion investment into the continent, right? And we see cloud expanding, and I'm part of a team that's rapidly growing. With regards to a region, I have no news to share on that.
Google Apps. Sorry. Yeah. So like the search and Google Apps and all of that stuff. I mean, that's currently only out of one location at the moment. Is there plans there?
Yes. So we are planning on further points of presence. One down here in Cape Town, if that's going to make you happier, and then there will be further points of presence within the major markets within the continent as a start.
Thanks so much for your presentation and for being here. It's great to have you here. Obviously, you carry 25% of the internet, so it's very important that we have you here. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Equiano cable and how we can maybe get access to it, or is it exclusively for Google?
No. I mean, this is through partnerships. As we said, this is an open access. And that will be driven through our global network infrastructure team. So
it's probably the most important part of the presentation, I think, for the people in this audience.
So and I'm not going to speak on our global network infrastructure team. They are typically, Chris and his team are the team to approach for such things, and have been, he's part of the negotiations team. Me being cloud, I can't speak on their behalf, but I'm happy to take anything to Chris and his team.
So, do you want to?
Mark Tinker, SAFNOG. I suppose one question I could ask, probably to the room perhaps, is does anyone feel like this is, particularly wholesale carriers and so forth, or even, medium-sized carriers, does anyone feel like this is a good thing, or is it a threat in the medium to long term? He's not scared to say.
Maybe not so much from a carrier perspective, but I think the shift has already happened. I don't, as much as the carriers are still trying to punt IPLCs and international transit and all of that kind of thing, the focus and interest from the eyeball networks is where can I pick up my content, preferably over a interconnect or a peering session or something like that. And yeah, I think the shift has already happened. I don't think there's anything to be scared of. That train's left the station.
All right. So, no more questions. I think, Jonathan, thank you very much. And
thanks everyone for having me.
So I think I have to hand this back to Portia so that she can be in the way of the beer.